Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Dave F., your host of Boiled as an Owl. Welcome. Today we're going to begin talking about step 4, the psychology of it, and the importance of it. Steps are in order for a reason. In order to even get to step 4, we have to admit powerlessness over our addiction, over our lives. We have to understand that a life run on self-will usually leads to pain and suffering due to the fact that as we try to manipulate and maneuver the people, the places, and the things within our life, we're inevitably going to step on toes. And it says that in the big book. It's because we try to become the director of our life, and we're limited in the way we can create the play, the way we can direct all the players, and the way in which we show up. And the only control that we have is that last piece, the way we show up. People in addiction in the beginning stages of recovery are the people that usually say, if only this person would have done that, and if only this person would have done this thing and acted this way to my satisfaction, I could be happy. The majority of people are functioning based on patterns and mechanisms they learned in childhood on how to survive the chaotic mess that their lives were in. And that's not to say that everybody had a chaotic life or a chaotic mess, but a good portion of people have chaos in their lives. We create these character liabilities and character defects and personalities around all of this chaos that we end up internalizing and trying to make sense of at an early age. So a lot of the programming that we receive from our own dysfunctional parents, we try to make sense out of it in the real world. And ultimately, when we try to go it alone, we inevitably fail and we end up starting to cause pain for other people. So why do we need to take a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves? This step in and of itself is so crucial to the rest of the program. So hopefully we've done our step 3. We're asking God, I give my life and my will to you to do with me what you would. Relieve me of the bondage of self so that I may better do your will. We edge God out every time we take our self-will back and we try to maneuver life the way we think life should be. And it's the disservice that we do to ourselves because we're so limited in our perspective of life. We understand life only through our own filter because you can't live anyone else's life. So all of the distorted beliefs and the ideas and all of the character defect mechanisms that we incorporate into that life edges God out. And we live in ego. That's the point of ego, right? To edge God out because we got this. And most people don't even believe in God. They don't think there is a God. And again, I don't believe or subscribe to the belief of a God that's some dude in the sky who's throwing down bolts of lightning and hitting the airwaves with thunder to scare the shit out of us. I think 20,000 years ago, that's what people thought. And then, of course, we started having scientific practices and we made sense out of things we had no idea about. And ultimately, my opinion is that we need both science and spirituality. I feel like all or nothing in either direction is not good because then there's the denying of reality, there's bypassing, and there's a whole slew of other issues that can be caused by absolute faith. I believe in practical and pragmatic faith in that I need my own brain and my own understanding of the direction I'd like to take my life in, and then ultimately give that over to a higher power who can see the whole playing field. I have a higher self, and that higher self is the bigger, broader aspect of me. And then there's this smaller physical nature that I have, that we all have. And I truly do believe, again, this is my opinion, that we're co-creating with our higher power on a much deeper level than what can be seen, felt, heard, and experienced in this 3D mechanism that we call Earth. I truly believe we're tapped in at a much higher level. And in my own experience, I've tapped into that and been amazed at what I was able to co-create once I truly practiced the principles of the 12 steps in all of my affairs. And it's a hard thing to do, because when you're so used to controlling and manipulating everything in your life, especially when it comes to the disease of alcoholism or drug addiction, every piece of your mind is devoted to trying to find your next drink or your next drug, because you need to constantly have an exterior source coming into your body to help you disengage the irritability, the anger, and the discontent that you're feeling pretty much daily, until you actually have a program in place. Your mind is just a war zone, trying desperately to get out of feeling the depression, the self-pity, the resentments, all that stuff. You reach for the drug, you reach for the drink, and that's how you maintain your sanity. Addiction is crazy because you have this emptiness within you. You're trying to fill this emptiness with anything you can just to stop feeling empty inside. It's a real travesty when you start to dissect these patterns with step 4, because we're making a searching and fearless inventory of ourselves. And the way you can make sense of that is to simply understand that any successful business in the world is successful because they understand what's saleable, they understand what's expired on their shelves, and they understand what they have to do to bring their message out into the world. And so if you don't take an honest appraisal of your business is inevitably going to fail. For instance, my business being a massage therapist, I'm very niche, but I have to consistently be visible in the world. I have to make sure that I hone my craft in such a fashion that I'm getting results from my clients. And then I ultimately have to know what I'm going to offer. I don't offer a Swedish massage or a relaxing massage. I offer targeted, specific work. So when I approach people, that's how I have to sell it. If I keep offering everything to everybody, I'm not going to be satisfied in my business, and eventually I'll burn out and I won't have fun doing what I do. I've always had to maintain the ability to give my offering specific to me and just stay in my lane and consistently show up in work. I've managed to do that for the last 24 years. My personal life and other aspects of life, not so much. Not until I admitted I was powerless over everything. Not until I asked a higher power to restore me to sanity, and then taking it a step further, asking that higher power to literally take my life and my will and show me the way. It wasn't until I did those first 3 steps that I was able to start getting a sense of what it was that I needed to do in order to heal all the parts of me. Very introspective, but up until 5 years ago, I lacked discipline and I lacked vision, because my vision was simply What's the next fun thing I'm going to do? How do I maneuver the life that I have to offer my children what they need? And ultimately, how can I have fun? Because I don't want to be relegated to a life that's pointless. And I needed this self-appraisal in order to achieve that. We expose the harmful traits that we've created in the personality that we make up to achieve our alcoholism and our drug addiction. AA's fourth step helps us deal with developing a whole new set of character traits that will create a whole different personality and help us to magnetize health, happiness, joy, and many other character assets that we can bring into the world to help become mature, strong, centered, and happy with honesty, humility, gratitude, and forgiveness. And in order to do that, we need to really truly see how we were living beforehand so that we can cut out all of the behaviors that don't lead us down that path. So, in order to transcend alcoholism and our limiting beliefs around addiction, we essentially need to understand any and all character defects or deficits that we carry on in our life as a survival mechanism so that we can then become more centered and grounded in who we are truly meant to be. It's insane the way in which we maneuver around life because we have this finite mentality and this sense of victimhood, this sense of self-pity and resentment. And what is a resentment? It's the chief offender of the alcoholic. And if we don't get a sense of our resentments and understand why we have them and then ultimately change the behaviors, we're going to be stuck in this hell of a life, always being upset and triggered by others. My sponsor says, if you are triggered, that means you got to get to the depth of the firing pin in your brain and excavate all that out, root and branch. And that's how we do it, through the fourth step. That's why we need a thorough inventory, because we can't take half measures in our recovery. We've lived a life of half measures. We tried to do everything the easier and the softer way. And I know in my experience, that easier, softer way really screwed up a lot of people, and myself included. Experienced pain, which is inevitable, but I never could stop the suffering. And the suffering made me a shell of a human being, and it was horrible. I just did not have a life that I was proud of. You know, on the exterior, everything looked good, but interiorly, I was crumbling. And the people that know you, they know that something's up. You can't really keep lying exteriorly if your interior is in a place where it's reflected back to you. I say, if you really want to know what you believe, just look outside of yourself and see who the friends that you surround yourself with are, and try to get a sense of the limitations that you impose on yourself. Our higher power is limitless, and that power is limitless when you plug into it. Unfortunately, when we try to direct our own life, utilizing our own power, at some point, we're going to run out of that power. It's just how it is. You know, when you're utilizing our 12 steps, and some of them you can utilize before you even get to the steps, but like, you know, trying to make conscious contact with your God every day or your higher power. And again, your definition of a higher power. Ebby told Bill Wilson, you get to define your higher power. I'm not going to tell you what that is. And I think when people are given that understanding that they get to design this thing, it makes this stuff a lot easier. And then there's also the need for faith. If you can't trust yourself or have faith in yourself in the moment, have faith in the people that are doing well. Stay in the center of AA, not on the outskirts. The outskirts is where the fear lies. When you're in fear, you don't give yourself the ability to step into a different personality. And it's all because of this idea of the spiritual dis-ease. It takes over our body and our mind, and our spiritual sickness just reverberates outward, and it contaminates everything that we hold dear. We have to put these resentments on paper, and that's what step 4 is. You go back in time and you try to start at the beginning and direct your subconscious mind to help you with this exercise too. When you're starting off with step 4, dear God, remove from me anything that's in the way of my being able to experience you and bring you into my life. That's the prayer. And then, dear subconscious mind, I direct you to help me bring these memories up so that we can get a sense of what we need to be rid of. And I'm not going to weaponize this truth against you. I'm not going to cause any further pain, dear subconscious. I'm going to use this for my own healing, because if I don't, then essentially what's going to happen is I'm going to keep falling back into old patterning and keep ripping the scar open and bleeding. And instead, I want to be able to get under the scar tissue, get all the granulations out, and smooth it all out so that I can move forward in my healing. We get our resentments out on paper. I'm dealing with a lot of resentment with my own parents right now. The resentment is when I was a child, I didn't have the proper guidance that I needed. And I feel that way now. Maybe I did, but when I look back on everything, I feel I was victimized in the way I was reprimanded, the way I was spoken to, the way I was belittled. And I've said before, my parents also loved me. They also gave me a good life. So it's not just me thinking that, oh, they did me wrong and that's it. The problem is that particular emotional upheaval has way more power in my mind than all the happy, joyous things. Because for whatever reason, I feel like humans compartmentalize the pain that they have and they sit on it and they stuff it. And then inevitably, without analyzing it, it will explode out and create havoc. I felt rejected by my father. And in feeling that rejection at the time, I didn't have a part to play in that. However, that feeling of rejection affected me spiritually. It affects my pocketbook. It affects my ego, and it affects my relationships and my sexual relationships, because that constant fear of rejection runs the whole show. And then when you add the layer of the emotional addiction cycle, we now have fear of rejection, which then causes anger, which then causes anxiety. And all these steps are all tweaked out when my brain starts lying to me and telling me what a horrible person I am. And then I took all that information. When I was a young child, I was the victim, but then I used that victimization as my response to life in my adolescence into my early adulthood and just up until even 5 years ago. I used that resentment to create all the behavior that caused me to push people away. I justified my drinking, my drugging, my nastiness, and my behaviors towards my children, my parents, my partners, and my friends, because there was this part of me that was so broken that I could never believe that you would love me. I was either going to people please and make you love me, or if I couldn't manipulate you, then I was essentially going to reject you, abandon you, and make you feel like shit. That was my excuse for that one piece of inventory. And I got to share that the other night with 12 other men doing this work deeply and lovingly. And it is so amazing and such a blessing to be part of this group where I'm held, acknowledged, and people actually listen to me when I speak. They don't judge me. And when I do share, some of them go, that's my story. And when they share, I go, that's how I felt. And that's why there's magic in this program, because you realize you're not unique. You realize that other people are going through or have gone through the same kind of an experience that you did, and they learned how to navigate that in sobriety, and then they actually have wisdom to impart upon you. The only part of the program that messes me up every now and again is the trauma bonding piece, and that's the part that you need to be able to understand as you navigate your steps, so that instead of living in the problem, you start living in the solution. You start seeing the mechanism and the patterning of your decision making, of your attraction to others, of the way you navigate life, and you start seeing those breaking points. You have a conversation with your sponsor. You have a conversation with your best friend. You get a network of alcoholics and drug addicts who are working towards spiritual growth, spiritual awakening, and the attainment of very high-end personality traits that become assets. When you're doing this work, you have to remember that not everything is a liability or a defect. There's some good in you too. You got to remember that. I'm sure there's plenty of times you treated others well and fairly. I know I have. I can also look at my motives and my motivations now, 5 years into recovery, and see when I am being manipulative, or when I am playing the victim, or when I have the self-pity. That's the beauty of the 12 steps. It gives you fundamentally a whole new way to live and to accept life on life's terms without having to take anything outside of yourself to make you feel better than what you're feeling. And it sucks sometimes. It's dreadful when you keep replaying the pain over and over and you stay stuck in the resentment, because that's what the resentment is. It's the replay of the horrible treatment that you received, and then you get stuck in your justifiable anger, and then the next thing you know, you're just projecting it all out into the world, because even in sobriety, you're human and you will do that. And the key is to acknowledge it, to work with your sponsors, to work with your inventory, and to become really good at self-appraisal. This is another reason why you want to get a sponsor, because when you're working with your sponsor, they will help you see that you're not all at fault or all to blame. They'll actually help you see some of the truth that you're not willing to see when you're in that self-attack. I fall victim to that a lot. But the good part about inventory, when I start writing it and I start working with another alcoholic, I get to see all the patterns that I need to disengage. And then through prayer and meditation, if I truly am willing to let go of those liabilities, I can ask my higher power to remove them for me. Because if I could remove them myself, I would have. But in my experience, getting on my knees that day and saying, hey, God, I need your help. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to kill myself anymore. I don't want to drink anymore. And having had that spiritual awakening that allowed me to have a complete mind opening and a change in personality was such a miracle and a blessing that I just can't thank my higher power, my God, the God of my understanding enough, because the gratitude I have for being delivered from that desperation is something that I never want to take for granted. This step helps us get to the root cause of all our dysfunctional thinking and our behavior, and helps us to navigate a whole new set and parameters of personality. I'm going to talk about this for a few episodes, kind of dig deeper in and even go through some of the different feelings and thought patterns that we might have as we start uncovering the dysfunction. Because again, we don't want to turn this exercise into even more of a victim party. This exercise is simply to show us, do we want to let go of what we're finding? Do we want to keep it? What do we want to do here? And once we become super honest with ourselves and we've shared all this information with somebody else, we can then start creating new behaviors. And that's where the liberation comes in. And again, once we get rid of the trauma bonding, we can truly become who God intended us to be. I truly believe that when we come here and we have all this potentiality as a little blob of a baby, we eventually get nicks and cuts, and every little trauma that we have forms us and makes us into the person we are. And I, in my own experience, have understood that all that stuff doesn't actually make me who I am. It was just things that I needed in order to survive who I thought I was. When I utilize this program, I get to live in the solution. And that's what Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob wanted, was to help other alcoholics and addicts to find the miracle and renegotiate their personalities to become outstanding, selfless people in the world. I am forever grateful for this program. It's a constant exercise. I can work it every single day. I can put it down for a minute. I can wallow in all my bullshit and then remember that I have a way out. It's an easier, softer way. It really is, because I'm not harming myself when I do this work. And when I do it efficiently, I have amazing breakthroughs. My relationship with my daughter is such an important relationship to me. I was able to really see how I created dysfunction in her life, and some of the beliefs that she has are due to myself and her mother and a bunch of other people. But I know that for all the harm I caused, I also see the rippling effect of all the wellness that's happening within. I am bringing all this information to you in the way that I understand it, hopefully to align with the people that need to hear it this way, because nothing I'm saying is new, and I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I am passionate about helping others, and this is how I chose to do it. So thanks for listening. I'll end with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you. If you like what you're hearing and you want to support the show, I have a tab that says Buy Me a Coffee. If you feel like you get something out of this and you want to help to further the podcast with support, I really appreciate it. I hope you find your higher power. I hope you come to, and I hope that you come to believe.